Right. Good afternoon, everybody. And thanks for joining us on fast notice for today's webinar to discuss what new tariffs mean for e-commerce brands. This is a fast-moving topic that's already impacting sourcing, pricing, operations across the e-commerce supply chain. So we wanted to bring together two experts to help you stay ahead of the news. So I'm beyond pleased to introduce our two hosts for today. Trivedi, CEO of Pietra, and Prince Ghosh, CEO of Factored Quality. Guys, thanks for walking us through this exciting conversation today. Ro and Prince will be walking us through what's changing with the new tariffs, what it could mean for your business, and what you can do now to prepare and stay ahead of the game. So with that, guys, I'll pass it over to you to get things started.
Awesome. Thanks for teeing things up, Tyler. Really appreciate it. And thanks for everyone who joined. I know it's been a bit of an insane time
Prince,
period.
can I hear you?
All right, can you hear me, Tyler?
Ro, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
There you are. Great.
Awesome, Tyler. It might be your audio, but I think we should be all good.
Sweet. And please don't hesitate to ask questions if you have any and interrupt us. This is supposed to be a collaborative session where we all talk about kind of the hard problems and how we can help and how you can leverage us and learn. So please, please, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A button and ask us any questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the tee up, Tyler and Ro. Um, Welcome everyone. I know it's a absolutely insane period of time in the world right now. I don't know how many of you folks are calling in from New York, but most of us here are, and the weather is a bit gray outside, which seems to reflect the broader mood and sentiment of a lot of e-commerce sellers and importers across the world. But I think for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to dive into the big topic that everyone is hoping to learn a bit more about, which is the import tariffs for the Trump administration that are being implemented in real time. I think the most recent update is as of 3 or 4 hours ago, there seem to be rumors that there's going to be an additional 50% stack tariff being implemented on Chinese imported goods. And so there's some real-time information that's developing, but we're going to do our best to give everyone a rundown of what is happening and how to stay ahead of the curve and help improve their operations. So why don't we kick things off with a quick screen share, and Ro, want to give the quick 30 seconds on the background of Pietra, what Pietra does, and then we can dive into the specifics.
Totally. Welcome, everyone. I'll kick it off by saying, don't worry that we're going to get through this together and kind of figure out a solution here. But for those that are new to Pietra or are just coming in right now, reminder that Pietra as a company is a platform that provides better infrastructure so that you can run your business and make more money. And as for those of you who have been using it, you know that we focus on 4 key areas of your business. Running a business is really hard. Hiring a lot of people is expensive. And so we offer all of our members in our community access to the best manufacturing and sourcing tools. So if you want to, make your own line of clothing, you now get direct access to the best factories in the world at great rates. We also help with storage, shipping, and global fulfillment. So another huge cost for companies. We are one of the most affordable fulfillment solutions, and we connect to all the factories in the world as well. So we make that super easy. And then we offer a wide range of storefront and marketing tools for people that are looking to scale up their business and may not be able to necessarily afford or know about the cutting edge technologies like AI marketing for your content or social listening. And we provide that to all of our members in one nice platform. So today we're, of course, and Prince is going to take over, we're going to talk about maybe the most important part of your business, which is manufacturing, production, and sourcing. And whether you're thinking about sourcing as, creating a new product or a private label product, or even things as simple as like packaging, this is going to start to impact all businesses. So we're going to deep dive on that today, but a reminder that we do these every week. And so if you have any questions about the rest of the platform and how you can use it to run your business more efficiently and make more money, please attend one of these webinars on any other week or write into us and check out Pietra in that way. Cool. So let's kick it over to Prince.
Awesome, Laura. Thank you for the background there. And let's just start here, guys. So obviously the big conversation in the world is, as of last week, there was an introduction of this concept of reciprocal tariffs that the Trump administration is starting to roll out and implement on goods that are being imported into the United States from all across the world. And the first question that everyone typically starts with is, how did we even get to these numbers, right? It seems like these are some absurdly high import tariff numbers, and how did we even arrive here in the first place? And so this is something that's still, up a little bit for debate, but the general kind of agreement and sentiment amongst economists across the world, and even via research that we've done within our own company, is the United States effectively looked at the volume of exports and imports with reciprocal countries. So in this example, the US imports over $10 billion of merchandise from Vietnam, exports a bit over $5 billion, making a $4.5 billion trade deficit. And in most cases, the tariff rate seems to have been calculated based on taking the trade deficit and then dividing it by the US imports, and then that becoming the percentage. And so ultimately, when we think about tariffs from a 10,000-foot level, the purpose of these tariffs is to help try and rebalance the American trade deficit, and the amount of debt that the US is carrying on its balance sheet. You can do that in one of two ways, either a production tax, so via a income tax, or a consumption tax, which is what a tariff fundamentally is. And in this case, the US government and the Trump administration decided to go down the route of the consumption tax. And so this is kind of where we are today, and how we've gotten here. But that's a quick background. Again, as Rose said, as we go through this, please stop us, raise your hands, ask questions, if you have anything at all. So now let's get into the
Actually,
specifics.
Prince, we have a question here,
Oh,
so
awesome.
I can jump in.
Please.
So for those asking about the Pietra platform, so the question for the group is, with new tariffs being imposed on China, does Pietra plan to expand its manufacturing options in South and Central America? Great question. So if you remember, Pietra's manufacturing marketplace or sourcing marketplace is already global. There's thousands of factories all around the world. And towards the end of the presentation, we'll actually bring up the platform, and I'll show you guys how you can find all these different factories. But the direct answer to the question is yes. There's thousands and thousands of factories that are now going to be added over the coming weeks that are international factories that you guys might want to work with, that might not be directly in China. So I think by tomorrow, there should be another 20,000 plus factories that are added to the platform. And I'll show you how you guys can do something as simple as, type in a region that you want to, like, let's say Mexico, and pull up the different factories that you can contact directly. And we still encourage using the rest of the platform, submit projects, submit RFPs, reach out to factories directly. But you will have a large number of factories that you should be able to work with and contact with your Pietra membership.
Awesome.
Okay, so onto that live, we got another one that came in. Looking to manufacture in Brazil, where can we look at changes to tariffs to see how things are affected? Prince, you want to take this one? Where can someone look at and see how their business is impacted? Or what is
Yeah,
the smartest way to do it?
There's a couple of different ways in which this can be done. The first is you can go on the U.S. government Customs and Borders website that will have a breakdown of what are the new tariff codes for all of the different countries. There's the famous picture, I think, from last week of President Trump showing a table of all the different countries, what the old tariff rates were, what the new ones were. That is going to be digitized and on the U.S. government's website. We will also build a replica of that on the pietrastudio.com website. So check back shortly and you should be able to find it here. And then last but not least, please do speak to a licensed customs broker to be able to understand, based on your product, what the actual new tariff rate will be. which is something we'll actually get to. So why don't we do this, Ro and Tyler, if you guys are okay? Let's go through a couple of slides and then we can kind of aggregate some more Q&A all together at the end. How does that sound?
Let's do it. And guys, please
Okay.
keep using the Q&A button.
Love the question.
Yeah, exactly for the questions. Please keep piling in and we'll answer them all, in bunches. But please don't hesitate to ask the questions.
Awesome. So coming back to this, guys, the three kind of high level pieces to take away from this slide is there are effectively two dates on which tariffs were starting to be implemented. The first was on April 5th, which is now past 2 days ago. And the second is an additional tariff, a stacked reciprocal tariff that's going to go into effect on April 9th. And the big thing to note is these are US time. So this will be April 8th will be the last day to get inventory onto a ship or onto a plane and imported into the US before the new reciprocal stacked tariffs take place. And so the big question that everyone has kind of been asking is how exactly do these new tariffs work? And I've used a phrase now a few times called stacked tariffs, which is what these new form of import tariffs are being called, where there's multiple layers of import duties that are being stacked one on top of another. And so the example that's given here is most products being imported from China, with a few exceptions, and it's really important to understand the exceptions, will now have a baseline 10% tariff on them, an existing tariff of 20%, which was implemented in January and I believe February or March of this past year, and now a new reciprocal tariff of 34%. So this will net on net be a 54% increase. There's now potential chatter of an additional 50% being added on top of the reciprocal tariff. And so this is what would potentially take the increase in China tariffs up to 104%. But on the previous note of someone asking, how do I know what my new tariff will be? The way that tariffs are calculated for imports coming into the US is via a individual called a licensed customs broker. In many cases, if you guys are sourcing through Pietra or through a factory directly, your factory may already have a licensed customs broker or a freight forwarder that is calculating the cost of the tariffs on your behalf, and they may just be baking that number into the invoiced cost of the good that you pay for the factory. So when you get an invoice from your factory, in many cases, that will already have the import duty and the cost of shipping on it. For any brands or anyone listening who works with a freight forwarder or a shipping logistics company or a licensed customs broker yourself, you will want to go and ask your licensed customs broker, what is my new tariff rate going to be? And the reason that this is so critical is because there are now so many stacked tariffs and so many exemptions coming into place. As an example, if you were an importer of a still water bottle, okay, you will have a baseline 2.7% of a general MFN, what's called most favored nations duty on your products. You will then have what's called a Section 301 tariff of about 7% on top of that. You will then be hit with an IEEPA, which is the current set of tariffs, 20%. In a theoretical world, you would be hit with an additional 34% reciprocal tariff for the newest set of tariffs from last week. But because steel and aluminum are exempt from the new tariff regulations, you don't actually have that 34% reciprocal tariff. And instead, you're hit with a different import duty code of a Section 232 steel import tariff of 25%, making the overall increase in tariff for this product about 55%. And this all comes down to the HTS number or sometimes the HS code of the product. The way that HS codes are derived is licensed customs brokers will look at your product like the still water bottle. They will break that down into a bill of materials. So they will say, hey, these are all the components that go into a stainless steel water bottle. And then each one of those components has a different tariff or duty code along with it. So maybe we should have started here, Rowan Tyler, but I'll say with that, I'll say this, to cover us to say anything we talk about here is should not be taken as legal or financial advice, and you should go and speak to a licensed customs broker. But this is where things can get extremely, extremely complex. So if you guys don't have a licensed customs broker, come and speak to us. We actually have a phenomenal network of freight forwarding partners and licensed customs partners underneath the hood at Pietra that we can help match you guys with. But this is how the overall structure of tariffs are constructed. Tyler, Rowe, anything else to add in here?
I'll just toss in a great question from an audience member asking if tariffs apply to finished products only, or will parts and components also be affected?
Great question. So tariffs ultimately apply to everything that goes into the product, but what the US cares about is what is being imported into the US soil. So for example, if you are importing a final finished steel or aluminum water bottle into the US, you will get hit with a final tariff amount of 55%, but that will be comprised of sub tariffs like the 2.7%, the 7.5%, and then the 25% steel tariff, which is with respect to the individual components of the products. But let's say, for example, you were just importing raw steel from overseas into the US and then doing the final production of the water bottle at a manufacturer here domestically that you find through the Pietra platform. You will only be hit with an import duty on the steel that you are importing. So the duty is ultimately for whatever is the product that is crossing over to the border and into the US. The best way to think about tariffs and duties are when you come back from traveling abroad and you go to JFK Airport and they ask you to declare the contents of the items that are in your bag. If you have any food, if you have any jewelry and things like that, that is what happens at a international shipping level for every product and every container that's being imported into the US. And that's what a duty or a tariff is. Awesome.
Great.
Ro, Tyler, anything else? Cool.
No, let's keep it going, and then we'll group the questions in a little bit.
Let's do it. Let's jump in. So the big thing to note is the range of what tariffs you as a business owner are going to be subject to depend massively based on the country of import that you are pulling goods in from. So wherever you are sourcing and importing goods into. So these are numbers from last Friday or the latest official numbers, but most products, for example, from China will be subject to a stacked 54% increase in tariffs. Products from Vietnam, 46%, from Cambodia, 49%. And the important thing to note here is over the last 6 months or so since the Trump administration took hold of the government, there are a lot of merchants and sellers and importers who have started to think about sourcing from outside of China and implementing what is often called a China plus one strategy to say, hey, I'm going to have a Chinese factory, but I'm also going to have a backup factory in Vietnam or Korea or Indonesia. What the administration's newest set of tariffs have kind of shown is, hey, large swaths of Southeast Asia, even outside of China, are going to be heavily tariffed. And so it's in your best interest to look for or try and find factories outside of the broader Southeast Asian territory as a whole. Um, so the one thing to really note, again, just based on the timelines that we're seeing here, folks, and jumping actually to the next slide is on April 5th, again, there was that initial 10% tariff that was implemented on April 9th. So in about less than 24 hours, that's when you're going to see the increased tariffs. So if anyone has inventory that is actively finishing production and being loaded onto a ship right now, if that inventory gets on a boat, and the way that the law is written is the government looks at, has the inventory been placed onto a final mode of transport and has it left the country of export on or before 11:59 p.m. on April 8th US time. So basically between now and 11:59 tomorrow is when you have the ability to still import remaining goods before the second set of tariffs go into place. After that is when the new set of tariffs will be stacked on top.
So really quick, as a good,
Yeah,
real-time question. So if anonymous question here, but if items are picked up by a shipper tomorrow, to confirm the tariffs don't apply. But if they're picked up on the morning of April 9th, they will apply.
Correct. And the one thing to note is these are stacked tariffs. So there's two sets. There's a baseline 10% just going back here that started already on April 5th. And now there's even more tariffs that are going to be added on apart from that. So the 10% is already in place. That started 2 days ago. But yes, if your goods are picked up on the morning of April 9th, that's when you will be hit with the reciprocal tariffs as well.
Yeah, and I see that one of our attendees, one of our Pietra fam, Gossamer, has written in. there's an additional 25% from implemented back from Trump's term. As Prince was saying, these tariffs do stack,
Yes.
unfortunately.
Yes, correct. The one thing for everyone to please, please, please keep a note of, if there's a single thing to take away from it, is this. The way that tariffs and duties are calculated, right? So the way that you pay the tax on the imported product is your customs broker, whether it's the factory using a customs broker or whether you're organizing freight and shipment yourself, they submit your shipping manifest, which is the declaration of what is being imported, into a system in the US Customs and Borders website called the AMS, the Automated Manifest System. As you guys know, government systems, think like the DMV, but for global shipping, aren't often the most technologically up to date. And so the exact dates and times of some of these records may be inaccurate. And what we will probably see is a bit of a messy situation over the next 48 hours between now and after April 9th on incorrect duties being applied to different shipments or imports. So I would encourage you folks, if anyone here is managing and organizing shipping themselves, to keep track and keep paper trails of all of your shipping manifests and your bills of lading. Or if you're having your factory do it for you, you are more than within your reason to be able to ask your factory to just have a detailed record of your shipping manifests that are available that you can claim for any time. So if the government comes after you and if you notice that there's an incorrect amount of duties being applied to your goods, you can definitely push back as long as you have that paper trail on hand. So please do keep that on hand. Awesome. Any questions here, Tyler, that we want to take from the audience to add in?
Yeah, I got one interesting one that might be hard. So if you have something later, we could talk about it. But what about, so we got another great anonymous question here. What about products that are sourced from multiple countries? For example, a glass bottle that is sourced from China but has additional decoration via another country. Can you talk about the country of origin requirements for something like that?
Yeah, great question. This is the eternal big question, right? Which is, hey, if I make glass bottles or candles in China, can I move them to Vietnam? Can I touch them up a bit and then can I import them into the US? And then will it be the China import duty rate or will it be the Vietnam import duty rate? So the one thing to very clearly note here is the way that the law is written is for a import duty to be claimed from a specific country of import, there has to have been notable transformation to the product or the good that happens at that country of export. So if you're importing raw materials from China into Vietnam and the assembly of those raw materials is happening in Vietnam, if you're making shoes and you're importing leather from China and shoelaces from India, and maybe your logo stitching from Korea, but it's all being assembled in Vietnam, Vietnam will be the exporter of record or the country from which you are importing from. Um, Please do not try to hack kind of your way around this. US Customs is very good at what they do, and you will be hit with a fine that is 3 times as much as the cost of paying the tariff if you try and hack your way around this by sending your product to another country for some light repackaging. But again, speak to your licensed customs broker for true legal advice on this.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'll say, we've been in this business for quite a long time. It's very enticing to just like very quickly do something that is not in the spirit of the law, right? Like some light touch ups is something that you think maybe I'll just argue and say the thing has changed. There's a couple things that we've seen, as Prince mentioned, surprisingly, the government is actually quite good at this. And there's a couple of important things other than fines that can happen. Things can be stopped at a border that you can't get to, and it can be stored by a government for some indeterminate amount of time. They can actually let it go through, and at a later date, they can do something and slap you with an older bill. So even if you think you got away with it, they'll be like, yeah, actually, like you didn't. And so all these things that you might try and do usually comes to, how do I avoid tariffs? What's the best way to go around this?
Yep.
And it's almost never like on the edges trying to do something that's like a gray area. You will most likely get hit with something that technically is like not allowed and is illegal, like misclassifying goods, et cetera. So you don't want to play around with that. People will say, just fill out this form in this way, et cetera. But we've also seen people that, the US government will, not get access to inventory for 3 months at a time if you do something like that. So it's best to do it in the right way, so you don't get hit with something that is, 3, 4, 5 times worse.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'm just going to synthesize a trio of questions here, getting down to like baseline tariff operations, if you will. Prince, can you just clarify when tariffs are due, when they're owed, who pays them? Will the Chinese supplier be paying them? Will Pietra pay them? Just let's establish a baseline for everybody on this call. Just take a minute to do that if you could.
Yeah, great question. And I hate to give a terrible answer, but the truthful answer is it depends. And the reason it depends is this. Every relationship between an importer and an exporter, so between a brand and a creator and the factory that it's sourcing from, ultimately has different Incoterms associated with it. And the Incoterms basically define when the title of the goods is handed over from the exporter to the importer, and those often determine the commercial terms of the arrangement of the production. In many cases, so if for folks listening in, if most of
And really
you,
quick, Prince, do you want to
yes,
go and remind people about Incoterms and what that really means, the international commercial terms, just for
yeah,
people who are
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So again, Incoterms, folks, are the simplest way to think about them is this is the relationship between you and your factory to understand when you take ownership of your goods and when you pay the factory for the goods. And not only the goods, but also the shipping and typically the duties handled or associated with the goods. So different factories have different Incoterms that you can, structure with them. This all comes down to, do you oftentimes want to handle shipping yourself, and do you want to handle payment of the duties and payment of the shipping yourself? Or do you want the factory to just take care of all of that? And do you just want to get invoiced by the factory with the broken down line item of saying, hey, it was $5 to order the candles, and then it was $2 for shipping, and then it was 50 cents for the duties and the tariffs. So the way that I would recommend kind of approaching this is speak to your factory directly, gain clarity on what are your Incoterms with your factories, and how are you operating. We'll maybe, Tyler, we can send a link out afterwards with just a glossary of different Incoterms, and the most commonly used ones. In most cases, if you are a brand or a creator that is sourcing through Pietra, in most cases, your factory is taking care of shipping of the product on your behalf. And so you will receive an invoice from your factory saying, this is the cost of the product, this is the cost of shipping, and then this is the cost of the duties that are paid on top of it as well. Ro, Tyler,
And
feel free to
yeah,
jump in.
no, just really quickly on the Pietra side, always remember to everyone that is a Pietra member, you also have access with your membership to licensed freight forwarders that understand this very deeply, and you can quite literally through the platform reach out to them, and ask them questions and ask them to help you move stuff from a factory to wherever you need it to go. These are not the reason you would do that is because these are not people that work directly with any one factory. So they are professionals in the industry of moving stuff from point A to point B from factories to 3PLs. So if you feel like you're not getting the right answer from your factory, or you think there can be something optimal, if you and we'll send this out after, but if you jump into the fulfillment tab, there's a button that says book freight. If you click on that button, you will get immediately connected to a freight broker that can help you answer some of these questions. And so if you're stuck or you don't know what to do, remember that through Pietra, you have a button that you can talk to a professional right away.
Awesome. Wonderful. Why don't we keep on going, and then we can stack some more of these. And there's a few Q&A questions that I saw that'll be addressed soon. Cool. So let's now get to a topic that a lot of people are curious about, which is de minimis. So the quick background for everyone here, if you're not familiar, is de minimis was the quote unquote loophole in US government import law that allowed parcels under a certain value to be shipped directly from external countries to the US without being subject to a import duty or an import tax. Most famously, companies like Shein and Temu shipped their products de minimis which is how they were able to avoid paying import duties on their products. The way that de minimis historically works is your factory ships a parcel directly from the factory, typically via air freight, into the US, and that parcel directly gets sent to a distribution or sorting center and then hits a last mile carrier network, and so ends up directly at your house. This is the opposite of shipping a product, LCL or FCL. And maybe, just to even zoom out for a quick second, for anyone curious, the difference between shipping a parcel and shipping a container really comes down to the size of the product. So when you think about shipping an individual t-shirt, a individual hoodies, even, a few socks, a few hats, those are products that can fit inside a parcel. Think about like what you get in the mail from Amazon or something like that. But when you are typically ordering in bulk and when you're typically ordering cases, containers that are then stacked on top of each other, these go onto a pallet and then those pallets are loaded onto a container. The difference between shipping LCL, which is less than container load, and FCL, which is full container load, is just dependent on how many of those pallets that you can fill up, and whether or not you take the entire container's space or whether or not you don't. So if you're shipping FCL or LCL, there's a good chance that, either your factory is a freight forwarder they're working with, or you're working with a freight forwarder to help organize that. This topic is really for brands that are shipping parcel and shipping de minimis. So the big change that happened last week is the Trump administration announced that shipments that have historically been shipped under the de minimis loophole will now be eliminated. This loophole will be eliminated for products that are being imported as of this week from China and Hong Kong. There was a question, I think, in the Q&A asking, is this just for China or Hong Kong, or will this be subject to other countries? The latest from the Trump administration is that this will soon be rolled out to most countries past China and Hong Kong. If anyone remembers, the administration actually sought to do this closing of the loophole in November and December of last year. The big limiting factor was actually getting US customs technology up to speed to be able to actually process this massive volume of import duties, and it's now being possible. So as of May 2nd, so about a month from now, US e-commerce importers will no longer be able to import under the de minimis loophole, and this will most likely start to roll out for additional countries that folks import from in the future as well.
Yeah, and I want to jump in here with one thing that is often a question that we get at Pietra as well, is as Prince mentioned, these are the volume of these packages that are coming in are extremely high, right? Think about like everything that people buy on like Temu and Shein and places like that. So it is important to understand this differentiation between you might get a package, and this is how it's always been, but it's important to understand. You might get a package that slips through here and there, and you don't get hit with a customer duties bill. That doesn't mean that they are eliminating any tariffs or that, there's anything other than the volume of packages is sometimes going to lead to things slipping through the cracks. So their goal as a government is to stop every single package, and there's some happy medium in terms of practicality and things actually slipping through. So when something slips through and you're a business owner and you go, hey, look, like we didn't get charged anything on this shipment, or we did this and like nothing's wrong with the business, just remember that the ultimate goal of the administration is to tax every parcel that's coming in. So you might get lucky, I like to say, and you might have a good result. But when you're building your business, you don't want to build it on top of, hey, the last 3 or 4 packages, no one really emailed me or asked for any money, so I might be in the clear. They are actively trying to improve this every day, every week, every month.
Awesome. Let's just go back. Can everyone see my screen? I'm just going back and forth between the Zoom in here while Ro is chatting. Tyler, Ro, any other questions in the Q&A about de minimis that we want to address?
Yeah, let me look here. Hold on. We might have a few. Okay, so the latest one is to clarify that we have until May 2nd to import under de minimis from China.
That is correct. So May 2nd is per the administration's latest communication, when there will be an elimination of de minimis for imports from China and Hong Kong.
Yep, and remember, I think the other thing that I'll say, which is a question here around Lots and lots of chatter around how you take advantage of the de minimis loophole. And this leads a lot of businesses to actually change their supply chains and do things like, hey, we could just like ship it here and get it over the border here. It's important for people to kind of internalize what's really happening from the government, which is they're trying to close the loophole. So what we have seen in the last 6 months is they close some part of it, another loophole, they realize it's not fully closed, and then they'll just go and update it. So if you're making big changes because you think that there's a loophole, or you're like, if we just, go put the products here and then walk them over the border there. There was a big, bring it into Tijuana, Mexico and walk it over into San Diego situation. They are actively trying to stop that from happening. So if it doesn't pass a sniff test, don't build your business around it. It's going to be very risky.
100%. And maybe just to double down on that, for everyone listening, there's a good chance that Customs and Borders is going to be twice as judicious than ever before. And so it's just not worth misclassifying goods. It's not worth overly trying to optimize your supply chain to try and avoid import duties and taxes. Definitely be smart about it. Definitely speak to a good customs broker about it. We have many that we can recommend. And like Rose said, we have an entire network of freight forwarders and customs brokers that we partner with here at Pietra. But definitely do not try and skirt the law is the biggest call out here.
Another good one that just popped up on this topic, Prince, is
Yeah,
does a sample of a product fall under the de minimis?
that's actually a great question. I honestly do not know the answer to that off the top of my head, but this is something that we should look into and come back to you with. My sentiment is that samples and individual parcels where the intent is not to import for commercial sale should not be hit with de minimis, but let us come back to you on that, and we'll send out a kind of email blast with follow-ups to the entire listserv. But that's actually a great
Yeah,
question.
I actually just pulled up some internal documentation here for we'll follow up with the detail, but I think to get people the amount, um, the 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 de minimis rule um, was actually targeted to retail-oriented shipments, not for large-scale business transactions, right? It really was for low-value retail-oriented shipments, and that's where the focus is. Typically, B2B transactions, which don't fall under, the de minimis exemption, um, is because they're usually not targeted for retail, right? They're for businesses, and businesses usually have much larger shipments. So um, technically, um, you can probably get away with B2B transactions that are sample that don't fall under that de minimis loophole of, you'll be in the clear, so to speak, if you're buying a single sample for your business. But it is a gray area right now, where what is the line between, a B2B transaction and like buying a sample for a larger purchase if you never put that larger production order in? And that's where the gray area really comes in. So right
Yeah.
now, you probably will get away with, no tariffs on the samples that are coming in, but we'll follow up with more detailed explanation. But I would look
Yeah,
for that to be something that the government has to define for us in the coming months.
great question.
And I'll just reiterate, there's a theme of questions emerging around partially completed items, bottles imported and then finishing the bottling in another country. I can't encourage folks enough to try to get in contact with a customs broker. Again, we have these services available on the Pietra platform, or you can find one independently, of course. I'm not sure that we'll have a chance to answer all these questions head on today, but that would be the best advice I would offer folks who are asking these questions specific to your brand. Obviously, you need an answer, and that's the best way we can connect you with an answer right now is by getting in touch with those experts.
Absolutely. Awesome. Just in the interest of time and keeping an eye on the clock, let's take this to the final kind of parts of the presentation, which is, okay, so there's this new import tax on all products coming in from China, and the way to import parcels directly from China to the US, historically under de minimis, is going to no longer be a possibility either. What is it that we can do now? And so these are kind of the
Prince, I want to jump
core.
in here.
Yeah, please.
Okay, yeah, no, you go. The screen just updated. It was just taking a
No,
second.
Got it, got it. No worries. The core things that we want to flag to everyone on this call is this, right? First and foremost, the import tariff rates and the punitive measures to different countries are changing on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis. And the worst thing that you can do in a moment right now is make a short-term decision based on what you hear in the news today. And as you're thinking about resourcing your supply chains, as you're thinking about long-term kind of strategic planning and figuring out who are the manufacturing partners you want to work with for the long run, I would really encourage everyone to take a long-term perspective to, thinking about your new sourcing strategy or thinking about a sourcing strategy. There are many importers and many brands that over the last couple of years built a ton of concentration across just one factory in one country. And so having redundancy in place enables you to keep your business agile at the very least. And then the second piece is, just keep abreast of the news, and we'll do our part on the Pietra side of making sure that everyone knows what is the latest and greatest. Like Tyler just said, we are here to help everyone find a strong licensed customs broker. We have some great partners in our ecosystem. They're the folks who'll be able to answer the specific questions around filling, around bottlings, around assemblies, around packaging, and how those impact your end duties and tariffs that you're paying. And then coming into some really tactical recommendations of what you can do right here, right now. And Ro, feel free to jump in. What we are seeing in response to the Trump administration focus on Southeast Asia is that a lot of factories in countries in countries across Europe or Mexico are actively trying to make it easier for importers to do business with them and doing things like dropping their MOQs to encourage new sales. So we can definitely help you try and find those factories across the Pietra network, and feel free to push these suppliers about lowering MOQs in exchange for winning your new business. A second really important thing to do is communicate with your factories and your suppliers. The more predictability you can give them about large upcoming volumes of production that you will look to buy from them, the better that they can be about giving you better economies of scale on your products, right? Manufacturing is, a fundamental economics question. So if you can prove that there will be a ton of demand, they can give you supply for cheaper. And then the last piece is it is an absolutely fair question right now to ask your suppliers and have an open and honest conversation with them about whether or not they will be able to absorb some amount of the increased cost of goods sold of your products. If you're building a premium high gross margin product, you may have the gross margin or gross profit dollars to be able to absorb some of these increased costs. Many importers, many brands, many creators will not. So have that conversation with your factories. Ultimately, they want to do business for the long term as well. And while they're businesses too, many factories have had the chance over the last 30 to 40 years to really optimize their operations. And so, treat them as business partners for the long run and have those discussions and conversations with them. Ro, Tyler, anything else you guys want to add in here?
No, I think just to go through, Gossamer had a great question around overseas fulfillment and dropshipping from China. Um, so one thing I'll say here is Pietra does actually have a warehouse and a fulfillment center and a consolidation center in Asia, specifically China, to your question. However, if you use that and import or fulfill, which was a very popular thing, direct from China, you still will be subject to the de minimis charges, um, or not exempt from that de minimis charge. And so the other part of the question was, I've heard factories from China building warehouses in the US to help circumvent the tariff issues. This is actually the goal, right? The goal is to bring manufacturing onshore. And so there's nothing wrong with people deciding that they want to put their manufacturing capabilities in America or a region where there's low tariffs. That's what the goal of this is. So Gossamer, if you're interested in learning more about our overseas logistics options and even our American fulfillment and storage options for you with you or your supplier, definitely reach out to us at creators@pietrastudio.com and someone will get back to you and we can dive into that.
Awesome. The one thing just to note, everyone, also is specifically with fulfillment in Canada or in Mexico and then imports into the US. Again, unless there's substantial transformation of the product, the country of import will be the true country of origin, China or India or Vietnam. The only way to avoid paying any sort of tariff, the one thing to perhaps look into is if you were using a fulfillment center in Canada or Mexico, is to see whether or not they are bonded or whether or not they're in a DMZ or demilitarized zone, which is a tax-free or duty-free zone. So that basically means that you can delay paying the duty or the tariff until the product gets ultimately imported into the US and touches US soil. You don't have to pay the duty when the product gets imported from overseas into Canada or into Mexico.
I have a really good one from Nikki Decker here. One of my items is made in China but stored in Canada. So my items shipped from Canada to the US. Will the tariffs be stacked from China and Canada?
Yeah, great question. So that's actually exactly in line with what I was just sharing here, Nikki. What you should basically check is your warehouse bonded or not, and is it in a demilitarized zone, a duty or tax-free part of Canada, and so that will be the answer to your question ultimately.
Sweet. I'm going to rapid fire on a few things, Tyler, here around Pietra's manufacturing network.
Perfect.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think let me jump in here and kind of walk you. I'll share my screen for 20 seconds, and there's a couple of questions we can answer together. So let's just do. For those that are looking for new factories, okay, I'm going to go and share my screen here. And let's say I'm just going to pick a company. Okay, so everyone has seen the uh, the sourcing hub, and you can see that I'm going to close this out. Let's say you're looking for a factory in Mexico. You can just go and start typing in um, the the regions that you want to work for, and I'll talk about this for a second because it's one of the questions, which is. So Pietra has what we call like our in-network factories, where you get a bunch of perks of working with this factory. You can, um, they're inside of our network. We call it. You can order insurance. You can order freight. You can, they're connected directly to our fulfillment center. So you can always type in, the region that you're looking to source from, and then go work with these factories. And at checkout, you can do things like ship directly to our fulfillment center, or insure your order, or do a quality inspection. We also allow people to tap into this expanded network. And so that is, this is the global manufacturing network that exists in the world. So you might not always find these in-network suppliers, but I encourage everyone to go in and, jump into a factory profile. And what you'll see here is, like this one works with a pretty famous Brazil Motorsports, and you can go in and get the contact information directly for these factories in the product. Um, and so you'll get access to thousands and thousands of these expanded network factories, but they're not in Pietra's network. So you're going to have to go and call them or email them and reach out to them. It's really, really helpful if you do end up working with them, that you go and write a review. Just like our in-network factories, we're building, a network that helps everyone in our community. So the next time, for example, if you want to find Kith's factories and you type in Kith, you can go to the expanded network, for example, which is the global, the global manufacturing hub, and you can go to and work directly with, Kith retail suppliers, and you can see that they're located in India. Not as rich and filled as an in-network supplier, of course, but what we are doing to help brands is instead of waiting to, have these fully formed profiles, we're giving you access and all of our members access to the tens of thousands of factories that you're going to need to reach out to and start diversifying your supply chain. So a little bit of a perk, we say, go start reaching out to factories, use the search box, and hopefully this is very helpful to our members.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you both. And thanks to the audience as well. Such incredible engagement on a very important, serious, and multifaceted topic today, guys. So stay tuned for some additional updates. I think the content here was so robust and meaty that we'll be doing more of these to make sure you are all feeling kept in the loop and getting your questions answered.
Wonderful. And Tyler, what's the best way for anyone to reach out and get in touch if they have any questions?
Yeah, great question. Always reach out to the creator support team. That's creators@pietrastudio.com. Otherwise, reach out in the lower right corner via intercom. Um, our team is responsive usually within an hour during business hours.
Yep, and I'm rapidly going and answering as many of these questions as I can that are like, will there be a replay? Will we be posting it on LinkedIn? Is there an affiliate program? All these things we will be reposting it. If you have a Pietra account, you will get a recording and an email, so you can reference any of the stats or the numbers or the advice in this call. And then Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, this will go on LinkedIn, and this won't be the last one that we do. So if you have friends and family that are in business that could benefit from this, please for the next one, send them the replay or allow them to come in and ask live questions on the next one.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for logging in today, folks. Again, this is a super important topic that impacts every one of your guys' businesses. So we're here to help. We know that this is evolving in real time. Like Rose said, we'll be doing more and more of these to keep everyone up to date. And we'll get through this.
There's one more thing. Dulce, sorry, I see that you asked multiple times. And so in a last-ditch effort, you said, "Hey, I've asked multiple times. Can you please answer this question?" So let me go and find it in this list, just to do one solid for our community here.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I found his question. Here we
Hmm.
go. Sorry, guys, there's a long list here. Due to these new tariffs, do you know if manufacturing companies in the US will lower their costs, or is it something you're able to work out with them? Being that issue is USA, I feel it would personally make more sense. So the question here is, do we believe that the US manufacturing companies will lower their costs to compete?
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. I think the answer is we hope so. And in the spirit of doing right by all these e-commerce businesses, and in the spirit of American competitiveness, I think that there's going to have to be some movement of the cost of goods on the American side, for U.S. factories to stay competitive. I think the reality is there are a lot of products that even if final assembly can be done in the US, raw components and ingredients and materials have to still be imported from internationally. And so our kind of general advice to everyone here is don't just think about this as like a USA versus non-USA sort of strategy. Go into the Pietra platform, look at factories in China, look at factories outside of China, really focus on the final landed cost of the good, which is the cost that it costs to make the product, plus the cost of shipping, plus the cost of import duties and tariffs, and make a comparison to say, hey, does it make more sense to move the production to the US or move the production from China to Vietnam or to India?